Evening and welcome once again to Gaming Under the Influence. I'm Mike here with Alex, coming to you from GreenDragonCVR in Woodbridge to talk about video games. How are you, bud?
Oh yeah, I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
Well, also still playing Persona and Black Myth
Still
Wukong,
playing. I've been playing Persona for like a month and a half.
since the end of July. I've been playing.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it's quite a long game. And
Yeah.
I'm now like 30 hours into Wukong too, so that's been diverting some of my attention.
True. That's true.
Yeah, but it's an excellent game. I'm almost at the end of the main game, and then after that there's like another bit of DLC content and I'll be through it. But
What, like another 30 hours?
I imagine so, yeah.
Oh my god.
Fantastic
That's
game though,
crazy.
and it's got me primed for Hashino's upcoming game in October, which
Yes.
is Metaphor Refantasio. What are you playing, man?
I
before we
just
get into the
started
topic?
Visions of Mana actually.
Saw that.
Neat little modern RPG, JRPG,
Yeah,
and it's it's beautiful. It's sick.
I'm really interested in playing that and also getting into the story behind the studio. How
Yeah.
the game was made and why it was already
Yeah, I've been
torn down,
Been
right?
looking up a little bit what a little bit of the history just to see, because there's a couple games in the Mana series, and strangely,
Yeah.
I've never played any of them.
Nor I.
So it's cool to jump into Visions, and I like it. It's like real-time action,
Yeah.
JRPG
Looks cool.
combat.
Yeah.
It's beautiful visuals.
It
Very
has a bit of a
vibrant,
history,
yeah.
and there are returning figures from the previous entries in this one.
Yeah.
So it looked interesting, but yeah, I'm sad to see that Square shut that down already.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Square does
What's
suck
going
these
on?
days. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
you'd agree.
Yeah.
So not totally out of character, but you know what hasn't sucked this year is all of the awesome games that have been coming out, man.
There has been quite a lot, and it's been sort of like under the radar. Like we didn't.
I think, you know, this is the problem. Sorry to cut you
No,
off.
that's
It's
fine.
that it's as though there's a giant, huge dump and it's
Yeah.
burning, and we're standing on one side of the conflagration, and the toxic cloud of smoke is obscuring the beautiful green grass on the other side. But it is
True.
there, you know.
It's there. Absolutely.
And
yeah.
once you manage to stop retching from the rotten smell of all the garbage, you can take a step back and be like, wow, it's actually been an incredible year. Like there has been
Yep.
a lot of junk, you know,
For sure.
undeniably.
Some of the biggest failures of
Yes.
the last who knows how many years have come out today. Some Sony's biggest flops.
Yeah, the most expensive too. This
Most
was I heard
expensive.
somebody say on the internet the year the slop flopped. And
Yeah.
I found that funny and
Very fitting.
yeah, poetical. But it was also the year amidst all of this, like something we've also remarked on before, these
Yeah.
dualities, eh? How things can be so bad in certain ways, but at the same time, there's more good stuff coming out than ever before. I think this is another year. We've been saying this for years, but this year, even more than last year when we also said the same thing.
Yeah.
This is verified, right?
There's a lot of overlapping.
There is.
Of things like this, and I mean, maybe due to how long game development takes, so it could
Yeah.
have something to do with that behind the
I
scenes.
think
but
there's
in
something
any
of
case,
a dialectic here. Like there's a
Yeah.
way in which these kinds of games are referring to one another back and forth, I think, you know?
Yeah.
They couldn't exist without the conditions made by the other thing that they're not, in a way. But that might be a topic for another day. We can
Yeah.
talk today, though, about what games have come out that are so awesome and why we think they're so awesome. What unifying factor there is between them that makes them great, in distinction to the ones that are garbage that we talked about before. You know, such
mainly
as
2 weeks ago.
yeah, a couple of weeks ago, the week before that, you know, it's been
Yeah,
some garbage
yeah.
these days.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on.
I think, in a general sense, what makes the games good, in contradistinction to the garbage ones, is that a garbage game is an instrument. You know, it's an instrument of the myopic worldview of the militant white imperialist, of the capitalist motivations of the producer.
Yeah.
Of any number of parties involved in the production of a junk game like Concord. There's people with vested interests, and the game can be no more than an instrument of those interests at the end of the day. It doesn't really have its own self-contained inner logic, you know?
Yeah.
And I think this extends to more games than people would assume nowadays, and that will make a contentious topic for another video too, I'm sure.
For sure.
But here, at least, the kind of games we're referring to are not that. They are...
Exact opposite.
Yeah, they're self-contained gestures of world building. They're original beings. They have what Tolkien calls an inner logic, you know? And you play them not for the sake of serving a financial, political, or even social goal, as you would with one of the garbage games. You play them because the purpose is participating in what the gameplay represents to you and what
Yeah.
they signify, you know? The same way you'd sit back and watch a movie.
Or read a novel.
That's right. The purpose is the content itself.
Yeah, it's mostly like it has a beginning, it has an end. It's a complete thing, you know?
Yeah.
And
it's a world, right? Like when you use
Yeah,
that world, people
yeah.
often think like he's designed a globe, like an Earth with elephants and others. No, man, like
Not quite.
A world means an ordered multitude, any kind of organic whole that the artist has constructed that has its own inner life and self-contained existence and logic. You know?
Yeah.
I think a world could be something like Middle Earth, something expansive like this, a literal.
Yeah, Middle Earth, or even like the Wizarding World in Harry Potter.
Sure.
Like,
it could be
just
something
it's-
expansive
yeah.
like this, or it could be something like the cities in Persona or Yakuza, which
Yakuza,
are
yeah,
either
that's
they're
right.
real places or they're closely based on real places, but the world building consists in the inner logic that the author has imposed even on these features that superficially resemble the real world.
Yeah.
I have this book that I don't really like about world building, and this guy says that world building is when you change features of the physical world so that they're different, and the new world is new to the extent that it doesn't superficially appear like the physical one. But I don't think that's true, actually. The world is a world to the extent that it's a self-contained whole, whether it superficially resembles the real world or whether there's things with pointy ears in it or not, right?
Yeah.
That's why you can sit back and say equally, like Yakuza or Harry Potter or Persona or Final Fantasy, they're all gestures of world building. They're all they all have self-contained logic. They're organic wholes.
Yeah,
That's the key feature here. And we're distinguishing organic wholes from instruments, things which their identity consists in serving something outside of themselves. They are not self-contained. They're not organic wholes.
Like a
They're
service
instruments.
game.
Yeah. Like a service game or something, which is a political pamphlet or, something that exists to make a couple of bucks for somebody shamelessly, right? With no integrity of its own, right? So, yeah, I think this word integrity is actually, it conjures like the vision of somebody who's doing the right thing. Maybe integrous would be a better word, something that's whole and complete and contained within itself. That's the kind of thing we're referring to here. And when we went to make the list of games we talk about today, I was actually taken aback, despite having played all of these, how many there have been in the past 12 months.
Yeah, it kind of caught us by surprise, just even looking back and thinking about this year,
which pretty crazy.
We had kind of just had this underwhelming feeling about it, but then when we looked back to it and we're
it's been incredible, dude. It's been incredible.
Yeah, it has been nuts.
We talked about it so much in the past 12 months, but Lies of P is the first one that I think of. That is really, like, to me, an outstanding accomplishment.
I think it's the best Souls clone, right? It has to be.
It really is. In many ways, it's I played all of them in the past few months. This is better than most of the. In many ways, it's better than a lot of the FromSoft ones.
Yeah.
Maybe their world building could be better in certain respects. They achieve more or less.
Sure, some polish here and there. Whatever.
Lies of P is to me on par with Sekiro. It's an amazing Souls-like.
What an intro, for them, right? For their first.
These guys went
in
from
that
making
genre.
mobile games.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the exact opposite trajectory of Western studios, eh?
Very impressive.
Where you at one point were respectable, and then you sell yourself to some giant publisher, and now you're making slop for the Game Pass, right? Here these guys went from making phone games to making a Souls-like? Like this?
And Lies of P, no less.
And the thing that blew me away the most is I was initially not excited for this because I was like, it's Pinocchio Souls-like,
Yeah,
it's gonna be like American McGee's Alice, just this kind of Tim Burton-esque riff on some fairy tale, but it was not like that at all. Wow.
Yeah.
The world building is the best part. It is such a Souls game in that respect. If you told me Miyazaki wrote this and I'd never seen it before, I'd 100% believe you, dude. It's astounding how
that's amazing.
Not only how well they approximate Souls in mechanical terms, but how well they understand, I guess, the worldview of the Souls games, the metaphysics of the Souls games, and how they capture the same ideas about how people relate to something bigger than themselves.
That's impressive stuff.
It really is cool. Yeah. The relation of people to the transcendent and what happens when people try to absorb the transcendent into themselves and localize it, and how it makes everybody into monsters, and the good guy is the one who restores the natural relations between things. And
sounds familiar.
Yeah, the balance of life and death. And anyways, it's a fantastic game, and I understand the Metacritic score is sitting at 84 or something like that right now, but that game is a masterpiece.
It's good.
I would say unreservedly, it's it's incredible, and it deserves far more attention than it got, right?
For sure.
Far more. It deserves the success of.
They're coming out with some DLC, I think
they are.
Point, right?
I think they are.
So that'd be cool to check that out if you haven't.
It is an amazing game.
Yeah.
Without hesitation, I call it one of the best games I've ever played, and it's.
No doubt. I've heard the same sentiment. Though I've not finished it, I will get back to it at some point.
It's incredible. And for me, that starts out this list where you're like, where did this come from?
Yeah, that was my first choice too. And like I said, I didn't even finish it, but that was my first jump in my head. That has to be Lies of P.
And its very existence is contrary to all conventional wisdom, you know, as such as it is in the West about making games, making single player games, making hard games, making inaccessible games, making games no diver. You know what I mean?
Goes against all of that grain.
It's just the most anti-dogmatic thing you can imagine, to just pop out of nowhere, right? And that's why it was so surprising. I was very happy to play this game, and I can't wait to see what they do next, actually. That's by NeoWiz in South Korea. After that, I didn't even remember this either when we were making the list, and I loved it so much. There was Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah, wow, what a game. Yeah.
What a game, man. What an incredible game. Both for, you know, if you guys have never heard of Vanillaware before, they're famous for the hand-drawn art in
anime-looking art style. That's right.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, they make a variety of games set in different genres all the time. Like they're not afraid to mix it up and say, hey, we have this idea for this game. We want to do it in this genre. And they'll just completely, you know, forget everything they made in the last game and, you know, just make a totally new thing. Like, it's crazy. They're very, very impressive, talented studio for sure.
That's right. And they're led by the
been around for years
personality there, George Kamatani. He did most of the art for most of the games, I think, up until 13 Sentinels, just before this one, where he was doing all the writing and stuff. So he offloaded some of the duties to other people. But this game actually was interesting because the chief illustrator, the guy responsible for all the world building and stuff, was sort of his apprentice. His name is Takafumi Noma. This is his game. Those are his drawings. It's his story. And wow, man, again, it came out so good. I can't believe, like, I love Vanillaware before this, but this is by far my favorite Vanillaware game.
Oh yeah, it was definitely their best.
It's incredible. It's the world building. We simply don't have time to talk about it at all, but this is a Fire Emblem style game with an incredible world, an 80+ hour long story, some of the best characters, with so much, the writing, like the quantity of writing. You know, and again, this is not like, you know, some of the Fire Emblem games. They didn't have a team of random dudes doing it. This is the guy's idea.
True, yeah.
It's very, very good, very impressive, and it's beautiful to play.
Beautiful art.
You absolutely should not miss out on this.
It has a mix of anime stuff and like pixel art style too. It's just such a joy to play.
And I'm pretty sure, you know, if you want to talk about complete games, like this is one of the ones higher up on the list.
Yeah,
like, it's incredible.
So much content. Yeah.
Like, and it's not only the you know, the Fire Emblem style like tactical combat where you build a group of, I don't know, 6 to 10 people you fight in that turn-based style, but there's also this overworld map you have to conquer that you can move around on in real time. Towns you have to rebuild, all these like side dialogues and stuff. It's a Fire Emblem clone that really fleshes out the Fire Emblem formula in many ways, for sure. And streamlines it in others, I think, too. Like, it's more simplified to play in some ways. Like, there's none of the you know, having children and advancing some. I think you can upgrade your classes, but there's never the same kind of making hard choices as you have to do.
Yeah, and like tedious like relationship building exercises.
It's
and
easier
like
to replace units. There's, you know, new opportunities to hire new ones more often. So I think in many ways it simplifies the Fire Emblem formula, but it's an excellent entry in the genre. It's made by essentially an independent company that's been doing its own thing all these years, and they always go, every game they're on the verge of bankruptcy. You know what I mean?
It's expensive these days to make this stuff.
This guy was talking about how even making this game, they ran out of money and he had to invest a bunch of his own. So they're cool dudes and
to the brink of bankruptcy. You know,
you really need to check out their games. You know, competent acts of world building and excellent expression of that world in various genre mechanics throughout the ages. So yeah, Vanillaware games are awesome, and this one especially by Noma instead of Kamatani. Check it out, Unicorn Overlord. I think after that was somebody people talked about a lot more than any of the other games on this list.
Oh, for sure.
Which incidentally I enjoyed, but not as much as they did, and that's Stellar Blade from Shift
Stellar Blade, yep.
Also in South Korea, another South Korean Souls-like, by the way. Play that last boss and tell me it's not, man. I'm certain if your opinion is that it's not, you have not played it.
Yeah, I've been kicked online for saying that, but
no, it's a Souls-like. I'm telling you.
Yeah, like it's even more like almost like a Sekiro-like.
A Sekiro-like,
right?
Yeah. Frame-based action combat, in other words, right? Yeah, that's what it is. And
the focus on the parrying.
Yeah, for that's right. Part. And I found it to be, although not as good as Lies of P, overall a very cool game, like a competent game. It was largely fun to play. The world building was awesome, like the cyberpunk world where mankind has been replaced by cyborgs. It's closer to Cyberpunk 2077 than Dark Souls, actually, in that respect. Like, the world building is very cool and something that I haven't seen before, and it incorporates concepts from religion and philosophy.
Yeah, it's a cool setting. It's really neat.
There's a neat contrast we talked about before between the beauty of the main character who comes from like this celestial space station sent by this AI called Mother Sphere.
Yeah,
and she's like called an angel by the population of Earth. These people are all like mangled, like cyborgs.
It sounds like very much like Nier in some ways, and not just so. Like at the skin deep level, actually. Like not just like the sex factor, an
interview between that guy and Yoko Taro at the same time?
I think so.
There was. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think Yoko Taro said something. He's
like, this is much better than my game.
Yeah, he was looking forward to it.
Humble, yeah. But in any case, it's a good game. I think the only things I didn't like about it, actually, its world building was perhaps my favorite element of the whole thing, and the combat wasn't bad either. The bosses were all very cool, lots of enemy variety, all the dialogue and storytelling was pretty cool. The only thing I didn't like was the gaminess of some of the sections. It felt like every area you go to, I guess there was a little bit of like platforming stuff, but it's just like climbing yellow stuff on the wall, go back and get a key kind of nonsense, like that kind of padding, bro, like climbing ladders and
could do without that pre-made fixtures.
Like
Souls has destroyed us in that regard, though.
It's true though, there's an elegance to cutting out this nonsense. What's the purpose of this? If you cut all that junk out, the game would be a good 5 hours, 6 hours shorter, and it would be better off for it, right? Like playing something like Black Myth or Lies of P really confirms this. Those games are better in exactly this respect. Yeah. Because of that, right? So, yeah, Stellar Blade is also worth checking out if you want a game that's a competent gesture of world building, also from an Asian studio, a new studio. Although now they've gone public, unfortunately. Who knows what that will precipitate. But this game, it wasn't the case at the time. So it's also something we can say constitutes the win for actual games this year against dumpster fire games like Concord or Suicide Squad and all of the examples.
Very contrasting in a multitude of ways.
Yeah, self-contained active world building, right? Yep. Not required,
not reliant on players playing with each other, services.
Not designed to convey any ideas to you one way or the other. I think that's enough about Stellar Blade.
Yes.
Frankly, there's other directions we could take that, but it's not worth it today.
Nah. Save it for next time.
There was also Yakuza Infinite Wealth.
Yes.
Came out this year too. And
which neither of us have played.
Neither of us have played it, no. Actually, I've only dabbled in a couple of Yakuza games, those being Zero and Judgment, and I've not finished either of them. But my intention is to play through them because of the fact that I view them just like the other games we've been discussing all these years as
studio, a lot of the same people working on those games, right?
There's it's something of an auteur franchise too, right? Like it's been overseen by the same two guys for the entirety of its existence, practically.
That's
the same couple
it's
of
good.
writers. Yeah, that's right. They work exclusively on that. It's their conceptual child, and the games receive critical acclaim too. It's not like this is not it's not quite the same as Lies of P in this sense that the general public would agree this game is awesome too, right?
Yeah.
Without reservation. So Yakuza Infinite Wealth, it's cool because it brings us back to what we're talking about before with world building, right? Like building a world doesn't mean building a place with pointy ears.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be pure fantasy. It can be like fantasy disguised in reality, like, even to the point of...
even realism can count, right? Like it's about building an ordered multitude, like a self-contained whole. If it takes place in Hawaii or if it takes place in Midgard or whatever, it doesn't really change the fact that what you have before you is an ordered, like a self-contained representation, that you're supposed to enter into for its own sake and all of this. So my experience with the other games in this series by these people has been that there's a levity to the games. They're slightly humorous games, and I'm sure that's verified here. I like a lot about them, and I want to get into them more, but the salient point here is that the game did well. They're going to be making more. Same people are going to be making it. They're not firing anybody in their studio, that's for sure.
No layoffs on this side.
Yeah. Funny thing is, this studio and a number of them, I think that we discuss here, they might be overseen by Sega. And I think in the West, their operations are being shuttered.
I did hear something about that because of Sega.
Yeah. But it's pretty funny that while all that's happening, not only these guys, but the next one we're going to talk about too, which is Atlas and Hashino. Their games are still coming out, right?
Yep.
This year, moving on to the next one now, we also had Persona 3 Reloaded from P Studio Atlas, and we're going to have on October 11th Hashino's Metaphor ReFantasio. Hashino's responsible for the original Persona 3. It's his story, and
Shin Megami as well, no?
He did Shin Megami 3 as well.
Right, okay.
Yes, he did Persona 3, 4, 5, Shin Megami 3. I think he did Digital Devil Survivor or something like that, and he did Catherine as well.
Okay,
so the guy's he's pretty prolific, actually. He's a pretty big body of work, and they're excellent games. Persona 3 Reloaded I've not played yet because I've been playing Persona 5 this year, actually. And I'm going to play Metaphor ReFantasio next.
Definitely.
But what this goes to show, talked about Hashino actually in recent weeks, perhaps it's not worth gushing over it at this point, but it's another the Persona series, and I'm sure this will be less true of Metaphor because it's set in a fantasy world, but the Persona series was one, and it'll be true of Reloaded too, where the world building takes place in a superficial way that's more proximate to our everyday lives, but it's no less extravagant for that. I think walking around Shibuya in Persona 5 and like close to the end, there's this event where the psychic world like kind of melds with the physical world.
Oh,
and all
that's
this crazy
so
stuff
cool.
happens, right? Like
that sounds really cool.
The understated metaphysical realism of the rest of the game kind of erupts at one point, and like it's hard to even say that there's this superficial distinction between realism and fantasy in a game like that. And it shows how accidental those distinctions are. That's
cool though,
really
because
cool.
you need the grounded, realistic setting to be able to have the other
to appreciate it.
Right? To appreciate them coming together and be, whoa, what the heck, right?
It's magical realism, the textbook definition of it, I guess, and that's cool. That's unique in this.
True,
you don't see that much of it in video games, actually.
Not as much. Most things lately are like, super fantasy or whatever.
Western or Eastern properties. Yeah. So it's cool to see that, and I'm looking forward to Metaphor ReFantasio too. It's cool that it's been a good year for Atlas and Persona and Hashino. I know a lot of people don't like him in the West, so that makes it even better. Very much looking forward to his next game.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. The last one we should talk about today is probably Black Myth Wukong.
Definitely, one of the biggest releases of the year. Actually, probably the biggest release of the year.
I think it's probably the biggest release of the year. Yeah. Made a pile of money.
Holy.
It's so funny that you see journalists say things like, but that was in China. It's like, so
what?
Okay.
Sold more than anything else this year.
Yeah, they don't count, bro. Like, what are you talking about, man? And again, we're the racists, right?
If it was a live service game, it didn't matter where it would sell. They'd be like, we need to be making more live service games. It would serve their point, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is stupid.
I think Chinese people are real and they count too. So, I mean, it doesn't really bug me that they sold copies there. And at the end of the day,
they came out and supported their good product.
Yeah, they did.
Good game. Sorry.
Yeah, their good game. There you go. They're excellent game. And what's excellent about it too is that we talked about this in a couple of videos ago in our what the success of Black Myth means. But Black Myth, it translates like this 500-year-old Chinese novel. Yep. It's essentially like, can be read in many ways, this novel, but it's at the very least like a cosmological treaty of how, this Chinese culture at the confluence of these three different religions, Taoism, Neo-Confucianism, Buddhism, how the universe was viewed by these people at the time. And I tell you this, buddy, it was radically different than how Karen at Ubisoft views it. So,
for sure.
On these grounds alone, we get something of an integrous act of world building that differs radically from what we would see in a Western
probably anything we've seen in the last
probably anything we've probably not been exposed to that metaphysics in a video game before. And I think what it really nails is the Souls-like storytelling, because you feel pretty befuddled most of the time walking around these like crazy places and seeing crazy things you just don't understand the significance of. Probably it would be different if you were exposed to the intricacies of the novel.
Yeah, probably. You'd be more familiar,
There's a whole genre now of YouTube video where it's like, what's actually happening in Black Myth Wukong?
That's incredible.
So funny. But, I mean, if you played Souls-like before, you know that that's a perfectly valid genre convention. That's how the story is communicated to you, as you wander around and experience the properties of the world and the behavior of the entities that inhabit it. So I think it really nails that. It really conveys an alien metaphysics you can appreciate on its own terms, an alien view of reality that's got its own linear logic for sure and is interesting to experience. And it's also materially competent. It's an excellent Souls-like. It has a lot of cool tweaks and innovations on the formula that I really appreciate. That initially it led me to believe it's slightly easier. You can freeze enemies with your spells, you can transform this and that, but certain fights are very demanding. That I've been seeing people getting stuck online for
I've been hearing about that too a lot, and I haven't jumped in yet myself, but I did see the sentiment that you do have these abilities and stuff that you wouldn't normally have in a Souls game, but again they're like making up for it a little bit.
It's pretty tough in some parts. Like some of the bosses, I got hung up on them for an hour or more, and
that's cool.
It's not the worst I've ever like. For me, like a hard Souls boss is like 3 days.
Like days, days.
So these weren't so bad.
Stuck at for like a week and a half.
Me like
maybe.
Melania, Radagon there. Yeah, those like punish you brutally. Like, but here it's not quite so bad, and you do have a lot of tools. You're always like, when you do fail, you're like, I just got to budget my resources slightly different, and I'll punch through. Right? It's not like a matter of learning these mind-blowing.
Sounds like they found a nice balance, difficulty for it. I think so. That's good.
And another cool thing, the last thing I'll mention about the mechanics is how you can kind of attack cancel into dodges, and let you unlock the ability to transition from dodges into using spells into using the staff. So it does have this nice flow that I usually don't feel exists.
Yeah, I'm
Souls
sure
games,
that
right?
helps too because it's a fast-paced game, I imagine, right?
Most
So
Souls
that's
games
nice.
you'll probably agree are punctuated. You do something, you kind of wait your turn, you know, it's not like this song, like a smooth movement so much as a aggressive dance or a boxing match, right? Like this is more it definitely has a flow to it when the fight is going well. So I appreciate that a lot. I think by way of honorable mention, you know, we should say Elden Ring also had a DLC we've gushed about multiple times at this point. And FromSoft is also hiring, succeeding, doing well.
They are the kings
Yes,
right now.
under Miyazaki's leadership. And lastly, coming out this year from the guy who directed Gravity Rush and conceived it, Toyama, from Japan Studio, you know, the guys they closed to make Concord.
Yep.
His game, called Slitterhead, which is a horror action game, is coming out November 2, and I'm looking forward to it based on the fact that he's making it. So
Yeah, same.
yeah, and this is a totally incomplete list of all of the fantastic games that have come out in the last year and which differ from the trash games in the sense that they are self-contained acts of world building which you ought to enjoy for the sake of the meaning they convey, right? Not for, you know.
And they will be enjoyed for years to come.
They will be, yes.
Yeah.
Like 100-year-old books on the shelf. They will still be perfectly valid to enjoy and will probably have merit that current texts don't in literally a century, 2 centuries, 3 centuries, right? Exactly like the novel Behind Black Myth.
Yeah, 500-year-old book, exactly.
And what will not have that is games concerned with contemporary politics in any conceivable fashion.
Yep.
Games which replicate the ontology and worldview of people with those politics. Games which depend on servers.
Yep.
Games which are supposed to generate profit, etc. Right? They're not self-contained. That's the point.
You said it.
Yeah, that's why good games are winning 2024.
Good games are winning. That's right. Yeah, and you know what? We're winning.
Yeah, we are too, because
in the sense that we have tons of good things to play.
They're doing
this
it for
year,
us.
I thought it wasn't going to be like this, and it just started to unfold, and I feel like it's been crazy almost. But
I do feel like
it's been weird.
Since 2019, it's been a bunch of good years, man.
Yeah, it's been
five good years.
Good onslaught.
Games.
Yeah,
I really have enjoyed the.
That's why it kills me. I know we talked about this not too long ago, but when people say, you know, like, this gen has no games, and it's like,
that's dumb.
Yeah, all right. If you want to be hung up over like your technicalities and things like that, while we just turn and look at these great games that are.
What do you mean to say is that you can't justify your hardware purchase, but there's more games than ever before, buddy.
And they were on great on PS5.
Yeah, they do.
Fantastic.
They do.
We'll talk about PS5 Pro another time.
Yeah, we will. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Take care of yourselves and play your games.
Play the good games. Oh,
Play the good games.